Welcome to Cutting Down the Nets. This is the championship game edition. We finally project who we think will literally climb the ladder, cut down the nets with the scissors, the whole deal. Is it Scott Drew? Is it Mark Few? Is it Gonzaga? Is it Baylor? I think there were paths to this being a game that provided lots of value, and I think those paths went out the window the way the Final Four played out. I think had Gonzaga smashed UCLA, Baylor squeaked by Houston, you probably got like a 6.5, maybe a 7 if there was enough momentum there, and I think that would have provided value on the Baylor side. But the way things went down, I think we are left with a very efficient point spread, in my opinion. So let's dig in and see who we have cutting down the Nets. Start with the Final Four recap. This was a microcosm of my entire NCAA tournament, where you had two similar outcomes, with the computer basically like weighting them the same, saying, yeah, these are just as likely, and then the human aspect saying, no, the Houston bet is way better than UCLA. I love Houston. There's risk in betting against Gonzaga. And ultimately, I split, but lost a lot of money on Houston and won a little bit of money on UCLA, which is just kind of how the year went, losing at the top, winning at the bottom. Kind of a frustrating tournament. So we went 1-1, which brings our overall performance. If you blindly bet Patty's median projection, around 51% for the tournament. Anything over the VIG is hitting at 55.3%. Anything that we're estimating to cover more than 55% of the time is right around 55% of the time. And then we just haven't had many swings at the top since the opening two rounds. There's been just 2 games in the last few rounds. So that's where we're at. Let's dig into the remaining 2 teams. And I think they're both really strong teams, but their profiles are different. And you may see an edge because of that. I will lay it out for you and let you make your decisions. I'm expecting 72 to 77 possessions. The median's right at like 74.5. Gonzaga's playing close to an adjusted tempo of 75. Baylor's closer to 70. This game's going to be kind of a mix. Some games are always up and down or always slow. I think there will be spots where people push it, and there will be runs in the game where both teams are pushing it, and then there will be, just due to the defensive strength of these teams, there will be some half-court sets, and you're going to end up with some longer possessions. So overall, I think that's a safe projection for possessions. So here's the story. I've got a median efficiency of 128.4 assigned to Gonzaga with a standard deviation of 7. That is very, very low. That speaks to the consistency of their offense and really their approach. I mean, they shoot a lot of layups and baby hooks and just shots near the rim. And if they don't, I mean, they're pretty efficient in making those, and just a projectable team, in my opinion. On defense, I'm giving them a 91 with a standard deviation of 10. On the flip side, we've got Baylor, a median efficiency of 125.5, but a standard deviation of 16. Defense, 92.6, standard deviation of 13. Story of their defense has been how they performed out of their COVID shutdown. And I just can't say, all right, I'm going to use these 5 NCAA tournament games to assign a defensive efficiency to Baylor. It'd be like 88, but 5-game sample, that's not how I roll. It's also foolish to say, I'll take those 5, skip the 7 that they didn't play well out of their COVID break, and then grab a few right before then. Like, that makes no sense, too. So their season-long number is, in that 91 to 93 range. I'm giving them a 92.6. So you notice the standard deviations. That's how volatile these projections are. one standard deviation from their median, I expect Gonzaga's offense to likely be between 121 and 135. And if you look at their schedule, their game by game, they are there all the time. They've popped up in the low 140s a few times, and they've had a few like 115 games, but very, very projectable. Defense, 81 to 101. They're usually closer to 90. You'll get some 84 to 94, but it's in the range of outcomes to be up a little bit on that. Baylor can go low, and they can go high, as we saw with their post-COVID performance. The bottom row here, this is like a true floor ceiling. I feel like I'm capturing like 95% of the outcomes with this approach. Gonzaga's offense likely between 114 and 142, and their defense between 71 and 111. It's a huge spread, but you'll kind of see how this works. Baylor's 157.5 to 97.5, defense 66.6 up to 118.6. So the story here is that Gonzaga's median is more likely to be achieved. Baylor's is not, and they have a higher ceiling than Gonzaga if they run on the end of that. If they run on that end of the bell curve, and they've got a much lower floor. So even if you live in this, one standard deviation thing, you end up with like Gonzaga with like 81 to 89 points, and then you end up with Baylor with like 72 to 92 points. So Baylor by 12 or Gonzaga by 18 is kind of like the curbs I see with obviously some ranges outside of that, but now we're talking like a 3% type of outcome. So that's just a little story on what you're dealing with here and why this game's tricky. And I've dealt games like this all year, and you ride with the median and say, hope we land in the middle. But some of these are tricky, like I said. So overall, the distributions do have Gonzaga winning more often than Baylor, but that's a lot of outcomes that have a Baylor victory. And then from a point spread perspective, she's close. It's a very efficient line. So here's where I have ended up on this game. I give Gonzaga a 58.7% chance of winning. At that probability, there is not value in the minus 190, as that implies a greater chance of winning. And then Baylor 41.3, and there is a little value there. I am not looking to bet Baylor on the money line pregame in any way, shape, or form. From a spread perspective, the spread is at 4.5, and Patty's median ended up at 4.1. So a little thing about simulations. You hit the play button, and it spits out how those 10,000 simulations went. You do it again, you get a different result. Now, it's real close, and you could crank the thing up to 100K, but it really doesn't make that much a difference. But if you're wondering why would Gonzaga cover 50.3% of the time at 4.5 if your median's 4.1, it's just how that batch of simulations went and how they fit into the bins. It's not unusual. Sometimes you'll even see like percent change, like they had a greater result covering a larger number than it did a lesser number. Either way, I don't see value in this game at all. So imagine not betting it. Now I have to figure out how I'm going to bet this game. So to outperform their median, I feel Gonzaga needs to get to the rim, and that can be tricky against Baylor. But ultimately, Gonzaga is going to put the guys on the court that we're used to seeing. They're going to run their continuity offense, and they're going to do what they do. They're not the variable, in my opinion. Like, they're projectable. You know who they're going to play. You know where the minutes are going, and you know what they're going to do. Baylor, they're the variable, in my opinion, and they can outperform their median by making a bunch of threes. They shoot a lot of threes, and they're the best three-point making team in the whole country. They made them against Houston. They were not expected to make them against Houston, but that's what happens when you have a 19 shot sample out of a season that had thousands and thousands of 3-pointers. So some risks to Baylor, I think, are Gonzaga's continuity offense. The Big 12 plays a lot of isolation, like hero ball, Cade Cunningham, Mac McClung type of stuff, and you're not going to see that from Gonzaga. So, interesting thought is these teams did prepare to play each other, and then the game didn't happen because of early season COVID on the Gonzaga side, actually. So, I'm going to bet this game live, but I'm not just looking for a big number. I'm looking for a specific scenario that I feel adds value. Like, if Baylor started cold and then you had like a plus 12, yeah, I'd probably bet that. But I'm looking more for Gonzaga's not shooting well, because the odds that Baylor starts cold and ends cold, I think is greater than Gonzaga starting cold and ending cold. So I see Gonzaga more likely to bounce back from a slow start, or to sustain their production, than I do Baylor. If Baylor starts 7 out of 11 from the field and 4 of 6 from 3, yeah, it could be just one of those games, and they just don't miss. But it's similar that they miss their next, 9 out of their next 11 shots or something like that. So I'm looking more for a variation on the Gonzaga side to attack, personally. But with a variable outcome like Baylor has, I think you also look for really good outlier numbers, meaning if Gonzaga got up early and the live, not even the live betting line, but the live money line was like 550 or something like that, then that's worth, putting some on Baylor, because again, with this high standard deviation, I think, I just think percentage-wise, that's a good bet. Like, if any team can do it, it's Baylor. So that's how I'll be approaching the game. I'm not having any pregame bets on this game. I may screw with some team totals and stuff. I find that kind of fun and had a little success with that in the Gonzaga-UCLA game. But that's kind of where I'm at. But if you're asking who I think is cutting down the nets with the 58.7, the less volatility, my answer to the question we've asked all year really hasn't changed. Gonzaga is cutting down the nets. And I hope it happens for them. I think Mark Few is a good dude. Scott Drew's a good dude too, but it's time. Make it a special season. You got that big shot at the end of overtime last game, and props to Scott Drew on the best rebuilding job anyone has ever done in any sport, given the circumstances of literally players murdering players, spreading rumors they're into drugs, covering it up, like just pit of despair, and all that in Waco, Texas, where you had to go inherit that, attract talent to it, and start your climb. So, 2 deserving teams in the finals. Give me Gonzaga to win. From a betting angle, let's get weird. Let's hope this is not a close back and forth game if you want to bet it, because I'll probably just sit the whole thing out. But give me some weird stuff early. Give me some weird stuff close to half, and maybe some weird halftime lines. But I'm looking to jump into this game. I'm just not going to be doing it pre-game. From a cutting down the nets perspective, this is the final game of the year. What I will be doing is a futures show in the next probably 2 weeks as those get released. We've got a lot of people in the transfer portal, but futures is something that's fun, but you have to do it right, and I'll highlight different strategies for collecting futures bets. So that is it. I'm signing off for a few weeks. Thank you for stopping by, cutting down the nets. We had a fun year.